thing is that so many of these terms have been messed around with and manipulated by Hollywood movies, the deep state. So we are left with, you know, like a huge mess of understanding of what these things are. And so simulation, I do not think it's like, The Matrix. And I'm not saying that The Matrix are not good films, but I think that possibly it's making us look at something which I think is divine, beautiful, amazing, incredible. It's a living field to me. And to call that a simulation feels rather, dumbing it down, really.
Welcome, everyone, to another week of Freedom Hub's Thursday show, which allows us to have a little fun with more controversial conversations and topics. Our Wednesday weekly show, as folks know, is more geared towards the health market and health freedom. And we have been going 7 years, give or take. I actually don't know how long we've been going, but it's been a long time, except for holidays. Sharing the screen for newbies, we have a website, and this is it, your-mp.com. And, the only reason you should want to go here occasionally is to see who's coming up on our weekly shows. We have them in two columns, left and right, Wednesday and Thursday. You can just read yourself at your leisure who's coming. We book way out. I'm booking April and May dates right now. And in the middle there, you can see our most viewed shows, and that's good feedback for us and what is on people's minds. And down at the bottom are our channels. To be honest, I only use Rumble. Every show is on all those four channels. I don't know anyone who's ever been to Tubi. I don't even know what that is. But perhaps our co-founder, Jeff Cantor, who's still behind the scenes helping, made a right decision. He's usually ahead of the curve. So keep your eye on Tubi, whatever that is. If you want to help us pay for what we do, we have a marketplace with profit sharing with great vendors, starting with my brokerage. They're on the left for anyone stuck with a choice handcuffing, ever more expensive and adversarial Obamacare insurance plan. Millions have upgraded to sharing with a health savings account. If you're on your own or in a small biz, you can become a cash patient with my help, save money, and get access to any cash price, and they all have them. So no reason to handcuff yourself thinking Obamacare is your only option. Other vendors include, right there in the middle, SNP. They take your DNA and give you a curated supplement based on your DNA deficiencies. On the right is Cardio Miracle. They've done really well with their solution. Further down, we had a plastic toxification show recently. She has a test that is popular with folks. And on the right there, some of the cancer alternatives that people care about. And by the way, Jim likes to give a disclaimer, so I'll echo it. Nothing in this show is meant to diagnose or cure disease. And we love pharma. Not. And then there is a tab for Jim's venture. We are both in the health commercial biz, Pavilion, more of a not just a integrated hospital, but a wonderful, fun, fair place to be. And Jim can explain that. They've actually almost broke ground, except for the COVID nonsense that kind of messed up his plans. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Jim to present today's topic and guest.
Thanks. And I might just add on that Media Hub page, also there's a link to our Substack. So we do invite you to subscribe to that. It's right at the top. So you get the emails every week, see who's coming. Plus even if you're a free subscriber, you'll get the video sent to you, et cetera, et cetera. So let me do a quick share. If my screen works, I've had a lot of fun with this. Yeah, that looks like it is. I think so. So this is our Rumble, our Freedom Hub Rumble page. And I was looking at this earlier because I was thinking we really have a diverse range of topics. Health freedom, the health freedom battles ahead, breaking the devil's dance with tech, stop noticing who runs the world. We've got the soil is the solution to everything. Who knew, right? Earth, the house that Jesus built, and next to it is life on the Ceres colony, which I think is a Mars moon or somewhere up there. So it really covers everything. But one thing, if you look at all these, that's kind of I think a common theme is we have to change the world. Like all these things are happening. Life is hard work, and it is tough here, and when we need to make changes. But I wonder, is it really my personal thing? And this is Elisabeth and I were talking about this. Is it really hard work? I mean, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who, if we go back to the famous psychologist, said, and this goes with quantum physics, you don't really have to change the world. You just have to change yourself, and the world will change. Well, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different subject from what we've been taught and how things work. And maybe that goes into that simulation theory, into what is going on. Who are we really? Or as Oprah said, maybe the only thing I agreed with is we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience. So I want to go over to, we're at the end of an age. Let me change my screen here. Everything's crazy. We see that all the time. We're moving, and on the bigger kind of esoteric side, we're going from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. We're hearing there's a fight with the devil, and we've got the satanic stuff going on. I mean, it's nuts when you really look, the chaos. And we look at our past, I mean, all the lies, we talk about this every week. Medicine, ancient history, Tartaria, everything's breaking down. Everything we've been told doesn't seem to be true. Maybe not everything, but a lot of things. And that's where our guest today comes in, and we'll talk. And if I can find where her page went here a second, hang on, sorry. So I pulled her webpage up. She's got a great webpage and doing all kinds of cool things. She's blogging, she's on podcasts, she's got books out, and I think this will be a lot of what she's talking about today. Got a couple of kids she's raising. I mean, I don't know if she ever sleeps, but she's doing great stuff. So I do invite you to look here. And she has classes. She's a therapist. And I can quickly skip down the page. If there's anything else, services, all kinds of good stuff. But let's hear today, because she was working on this presentation to help us understand where we are at this great divide, maybe how we can get through it more easily, or or what's going on. So did I get that right, Elisabeth? I'm not sure, but let me stop my share and turn it over to you to pick it up or correct me, whatever. Thanks. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, that was all absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. And yeah, a lot of my presentation today I've lifted from my second book. So and I put in a lot of slides, but I think we'll just sort of organically, go through and start to look at universe, multiverse simulation. And I think more importantly, understand how we fit into that and where we are going moving forward. So as Jim very kindly said, so I'm a writer, researcher, intuitive, healer. I also do channeling as well, which I've been doing for about 9 years. And I would say that most of this information comes from that. When you connect to the wider field, you seem to be able to expand your consciousness in ways that I don't think we're able to do necessarily in this 3D reality. So we're just going to be going through some slides today and just thinking about universe and multiverse or simulation, and possibly it's even all three. So something that I suspect that you feel and I feel and spiritual people feel and even quantum physicists feel is that the universe is alive. And it's been very hard for us to prove this, but there are many scientists trying to prove it, just as they're trying to prove that it's a multiverse as well. We can feel it in our bones, but mainstream science doesn't recognize any of these things. So our ancient ancestors also knew this. The Indian Vedas, which are said to be the oldest stories, they say that humans have been around for millions of years. And essentially, we live in a multiverse. So, but they, just like the animists, the Celts, pagans, shamans, aborigines, what they're saying is that the world is not fixed. And this is a key part of what we're going to be looking at today, because I've been fascinated by how they built those old world buildings for a very long time. And I've been trying to research all of this. So the universe is alive. It's what I call the living field, because it does feel alive to me. And I connect with universal life force all the time. I connect with the different intelligences that I think live in the multiverse that we call ETs, which I wouldn't say that they are ETs, but they're different intelligences. And we can talk to them and gather lots of information about them. But ultimately, how is this work? How is this field living? Well, from my research, it's because of ether. And we know ether was taken out of the periodic table in the 1800s. I suspect ether is plasma, because plasma makes up 99.9% of the universe. And what we understand about plasma and ether and all of these different things, quantum physics tells us, is that it responds to us. The living field responds to us. And again, that's a key part of all of this. So we already know that we're creators, we're co-creators with the universe or the living field. We also have the morphic field in there, which is essentially a field of repeatability. And this is what we could call a collective consciousness. And this is, I think, how the elites have managed to herd us into creating this crappy world that we see around us, because the morphic field is a field of repeatability. You do something and it does it again and again and again. And the shamans work with that field as well. So again, it's alive, but it's science. And we also have the A field, or Akashic field, as Irvin Laszlo calls it, the A field. And again, this is a record of everything. So everything has electrical charge. Even our thoughts have electrical charge, everything. It's all part of this living field. It never disappears. It's always there. So we are co-creators within a living field. And I think we all know that. So if we look at these buildings, and this is just, four, I mean, there's literally hundreds of these things. How did we build these buildings? Did the living field build these buildings? And we can see this one on the far right here. These turrets, they just seem to grow into the sky. And again, we'll be looking at these things in a second. We'll come back to that. But what we can see, and we can understand this from the rose windows and also some studies that they've done, we can see that these buildings are essentially based on frequency. And we can see this because of the rose windows, because the exact frequency that is inside the cathedral is shown on the rose windows. And these are the rose windows here. And we know that these frequencies are there because plates of sand have been left inside the cathedrals. And these same cymatic shapes have formed in the sand. So we can see that this shape that they call a rose window, this shape is the frequency of the hum that's inside the cathedral. So again, thinking about this frequency sound, we all know that everything is frequency and sound, but what does that mean exactly? And if we look at this, so here we have star forts, and again, silly names for things that have been given. And star forts, of course, they're not star forts, but we can see top left-hand corner, we can see this is where all the star forts have been found. And it's just interesting also to see where they are found. we can see top right-hand corner, the ley lines, the millions of ley lines around the world. And we can see that these star forts are most likely built on areas where ley lines cross, areas where that our ancient ancestors knew that these were very important parts of the land. And possibly these star forts are again the resonant hum of the land that we also see with the cymatic buildings here. Now we know that there is a resonant hum of the earth, but it's also connected to the sky. And that's why I don't think that's space up above us. I think space is something different. So if we look at this bottom left-hand corner here, we can see that this is, I never pronounce this name properly, Teotihuacan. I hope that's pronounced properly. And we can see that that's the outlay of the area. And if we look here, we can see that this is a computer board. So are we seeing this outlay of essentially a motherboard, a computer board? And I wonder if we are. I was speaking to a lady yesterday in Ireland, and she was saying some very interesting things about Ireland as well, and sacred geometry they had there. Now, this is a slide taken from Bridget Knapp. She's one of our Tartarian conference speakers, and she essentially her and her husband have done a lot of work on this, and she's essentially saying that this is a simulation, that this is an Earth motherboard, and that buildings have been literally simulated on top of previous buildings. And this is actually a map of Rome, the old Roman buildings. And you can see the black buildings are the ones from 27 to 476 AD, CE, or AD. And then the red ones are from an earlier time period. And you can see how they're sort of laid over each other, that they're not laid over properly. So you wouldn't sort of see that and think what they built on older buildings. They've actually built over buildings in a way that doesn't logically make sense. And what she is saying, and this is key, I think, for all of this, is imagine our realm as not a fixed object, but as a resonant container of standing waveforms. And as long as the waveforms remain coherent, then this simulation is stable. And what can make it unstable? Well, solar bursts can, comets can, and also frequency manipulation. And we know HAARP, direct energy weapons, even Wi-Fi, all of this can make it unstable. And we can certainly see that it could be this instability which creates the wipeouts that we'll look at in a minute. So if you want to find Bridget Knapp, she's on @Taurus on YouTube. And essentially what she's showing here is the same thing. So here we have a computer board. Here we have the mapped out. This is the holographic image, because what we always forget, I think, is that nothing is physical. And this is so hard because our egos literally can never understand that nothing is physical. It's by default something that our ego can never understand it. That's why it's always blocking spiritual thinking. And when we're trying to sort of think in more spiritual ways, the ego will always block it because it cannot ever be spiritual. It is an analytical, an analyzer. So if we see here, this is a holographic image of what we could say, this is the physical image. And how does that work? Well, I suspect it's plasma, because plasma is all four states of matter. It's solid, it's gas, it's liquid. I mean, it's not an actual liquid, but it expresses itself as a liquid in laboratory experiments. And it's also invisible. And I suspect that this is how ETs work the holographic field as well. That they're probably what we call plasma beings. So here again, just a few more examples. And we can see that, especially with the crop circles, we can see that it's not just the resonant hum of the land, it's also the sky. So, and what we call the cosmos. So the energy comes from the sky and also the earth, and it creates all of this cymatic shapes, the sacred geometry, everything that we see. So the ancients knew about the sky. They knew how important it was, and what we see up there is an important part of the earth. I feel it's more like a map of the different ages. And that's also part of the simulation. In my opinion, it doesn't mean that space doesn't exist, but I don't think it's what we see above us. So look at these buildings. Here we've got more buildings from India. And these are just absolutely incredible. You know, and the ancient texts, they say that they were built by the devas. These are the gods. The Indian Vedas talk about the devas. And they say that they taught the humans how to do this. And I suspect that if they were actually built, it was using frequency, levitation frequency, but possibly it's using cymatic frequency in some way that we've forgotten about. Now, thinking about the living field again, everything is alive in it. And this is, again, something that the animists, the Celts, the pagans, they all knew this. They all understand it. They possibly couldn't explain it in a scientific way that we possibly can today, but they knew it. And I was speaking to a friend last week. She was telling me about her cheese plant, and it kept growing into her room, and it was just growing so far into her room that she kept knocking it. And she then said to it, "Please, could you grow the other way? Because I don't want to hurt you." And within 2 weeks, it had grown the other way. So does that mean that the plants understood her, that, you know, that they can speak English? I don't think so. I think it's to do with intention. Everything is intention. Human consciousness, we create through intention. And this is the basis of manifestation, as we know. So everything is intention. And quantum physics also shows us this as well. Another interesting thing about plants, I was talking to my friends yesterday about this in Ireland. And I'm actually beginning to write my third book, and I'm essentially gathering up all the information about the old ways, because I think we need to bring it back. And what she was telling me was in the 1700s in Ireland, people, they used to pee and poop on the outskirts of their village. And this explains why they didn't have toilets inside their houses. And I never understood this. The old world buildings don't have toilets. And all of us Tartarian researchers felt that maybe it was because they were breatharians or they were beings of light. And maybe it was. But it could also be because of this as well. So this is what they used to do in her village in the 1800s. And essentially, Mother Nature, or the plants, they would essentially feel into what was missing from the humans, you know. So, and again, I always say nothing new, there's nothing new under the sun. Whatever technology we are coming up with now, it's existed before. I'm certain of this. So then the plants used to grow in that part of the town, the village, that would be nourishing and would heal the humans of the problems that they had. For example, hawthorn berries and the leaves help with heart problems. And this is incredible. So Mother Nature used to essentially give them what they needed in order to replenish their bodies. And again, you know, showing that we are part of a living field. We are part of nature. We are part of all of it. And we have forgotten, or we have been made to forget. And just coming back to the indigenous people again, they don't refer to trees as trees. They call them treeing. And why do they say this? It's because they know that trees are not fixed or solid. And certainly the animists, you know, the Celts, the Aborigines, the animists, This is how they see reality. They already view reality as multidimensional. They don't see it as a fixed state. They never have done. So they don't see trees as fixed or solid things. They don't see us as fixed or solid things. And I think, again, this is showing us that we used to be what we possibly call 5D. We used to be the luminous beings, the beings of light that I talk about a lot on my YouTube channel. And something happened and we got stapled down into linear one-dimensional thinking where we believe that we are fixed objects, and we're not. And that, I think, is one of the fundamental things that we can start to remember today. And just thinking about other dimensions. So, just something I read when I was researching for my first book, in fact, is that quantum physicists can create things in other dimensions and bring them into this dimension. So, what is a dimension? What is a dimension? Well, it's a vibrational frequency. They're different vibrational frequencies. But here we have, these are some of the researchers, scientists who talk about the multiverse. And it's not proven. The multiverse is not proven. But the fact that there are so many people trying to prove it means that we can feel it. We can feel it, And, here we've got Infinite Space by Max Tegmark. We've got Inflationary Cosmology by Alan Guth. We've got The Many Worlds Interpretation by Hugh Everett. And I talk about these in my second book. I do tackle multidimensionality in my second book because I also feel that it's a fundamental part of our existence. And we've also got M theory, and this, of course, is Michio Kaku, who's a very famous string theorist. He does a lot on YouTube, very interesting what he talks about. And he's essentially talking about the universe as being different membranes and different dimensions. They essentially float into each other. And as they move into each other, we can, for split seconds of time, we can access other dimensions. And here we have Skinwalker Ranch. I think most people have heard about this. So Skinwalker Ranch is always talking about how they are able to access what they believe are other dimensions or possibly timelines, because they're seeing things like direwolves and dinosaurs. So possibly timelines. But again, timelines is part of that. Parallel universes. It's all part of this entire sort of infinite field where everything exists. In Skinwalker Ranch in particular, they were able to see these different direwolves and dinosaurs, but the guns didn't work on them. So it showed that they were sort of seeing an image. And they use thermal imaging technology to see essentially more of what our eyes can see. And we all know that our eyes can see hardly anything. This is another interesting story, which I talk about in my book as well. And this one comes from Linda Moulton Howe. And it's essentially, she interviewed Jerry Wills, and he's a healer. He used to be an engineer. He basically says that he comes from Tau Ceti. This is what he was told. And he is one of the dropped off babies. So he came here as a dropped off baby. And, he certainly is very unusual and certainly has very unusual abilities. And so he essentially put his head through this door that you can see here. And this is the Amaru Meru near Lake Titicaca in Peru, said to be a portal. And he repeated certain tones, which are frequencies, over and over again, and also used symbols. And when we look at the ancient Egyptians and we look at the the frequencies that they used to use, the symbols that they used to use, what we call magic today. This is what I think is advanced science that we have forgotten how to use, or it's been hidden from us because we don't have high enough consciousness to use it. It's passed down through the secret societies, through the mystery schools. But essentially, he disappeared and he found himself in a white corridor and he heard a voice speaking. And he was told that he was in another universe and that our universe was inside theirs. And while their scientists were studying their universe, they had accidentally created ours. And were then surprised to find that this tiny universe began to grow. And it became widely populated by life. It became populated by life very fast, which is why I always think the universe or multiverse is possibly anything that we can imagine. And there is life at every level of it, So they created portals all around the world, and in order to be able to monitor our universe, because our universe obviously affects their universe. And they told him that he was not the first person who had come into their universe in this way. So I think that's very interesting. And if we just look at portals here, these are all things that are said to be portals in our world. And essentially, I think a portal is possibly ley lines where they cross, and you can put crystals underneath and it creates a rip in the electromagnetic field, essentially. And what I found interesting was all these round circles that are starting to pop up around the world, and it's called modern art. But I wonder about that. And this one here, this square one here, that's in Dubai, where I also live. And again, they're very random things. So what is that? Now, we know that we're moving into the space age because Aquarius it's all about technology. And as we move into Aquarius, we're possibly moving into the space age. We're moving into galactic consciousness. Is this going to be a way for us to connect with other dimensions, other dimensions of space and time? Now, here we have the Philadelphia experiment. And this is linking time. So rather than just looking at dimensions as places to go, we can include time in that as well. And we know the Philadelphia experiment, 1943, that they were essentially trying to move this boat through time. They were trying to move it from one part of the field to another part of the field. And it created a big mess. And the soldiers, the naval officers or the people on the boat were essentially, they melded into the walls and sides of the boat. So it didn't work. Now, this was 1943, and I'm sure that they have tried it again since then. And we can see the secret space programs as well. So this is the deep states, the Nazis working on this. And again, I talk about this in my second book. So we can see that consciousness can be fractured. And you can essentially move consciousness into other parts of the field, other clones, whatever it may be. Psychiatrists talk about the alters in the brain that we can splinter or fracture consciousness, the brain, the mind. And this shows us that we are a fundamental part of this living field. And we have far more power than we know we have. And this, again, has been hidden from us. So human consciousness works with the living field. I think we all know this. But the reason I talk about the secret space program is because I don't think we know on what level we actually affect the living field. In 1957, Dr. Professor Hans Eysenck, chairman of the psychology department of the University of London, he discovered that there were 30 universities all around the world who were covering up the truth about frequencies and our human consciousness and how it affects our reality. And here, you know, the Bible is littered with these little sort of clues about things. And one of the things that it says in here is it's essentially saying you can manifest. If you believe something enough, you can make it happen. And I talk about Marcel Vogel in my book. And on his website, he even shows you how to manifest like an apple into your hand, like physically manifest something into your hand. So again, human consciousness works with the living field, but the deep state mad scientists, I think, have taken that to another level with consciousness and secret space programs. Here we have David Bohm, who believed that plasma comes alive and acts as a medium for intelligences operating outside of space-time. And he believed that these intelligences come from a deeper level of existence. And I would agree with him. I think that's what ETs are. And also Canadian psychologist Michael Persinger, he studied the effects of electromagnetism on the brain, which led him to believe that electromagnetic fields and geomagnetic activity were responsible for impacting the temporal lobes and stimulating otherworld experiences. But he believed that these were not hallucinations, that they were actually real experiences. And the same things as David Bohm is saying, that we're connecting to deeper levels of our existence, showing us that there is a lot more to this living field than we can possibly even imagine. And you may remember I think it was the Israeli, the ex-Ministry of Defense minister or something like that, I think he was. Was it Professor Chaim Eshed? Yeah, I think it was. And he talks about how the Galactic Federation are essentially, they're waiting for us to understand what space actually is. Oh, okay, 5 minutes, all right. So here we can see the human brain. The human brain, it has been discovered that we essentially, we can access 11-dimensional structures, essentially. M theory, which we talked about with Michio Kaku, he also stated where M theory shows us that we live in an 11-dimensional structure, and our brains are set up for that. So here we have, are we living in a simulation? Well, here we can see evidence of the wipeouts in our world, mud floods. And this for me is the fundamental part of it, and it's the astrological charts. I've always wondered about astrology. How does it work? You know, how does that work when we're a being of light? And essentially, the Indian Vedas are saying that every new world, so we have these wipeout situations, and every new world, a Manu is created to lead humanity into the next cycle. And the astrological era, every 26,000 years, we get to the end of that entire zodiac, 12 zodiac on the calendar. We get to the end of it. We've just reached the end of one now. The end is the Pisces. We are beginning a new one, which is Aquarius, a brand new cycle. And one of the things that signals the end of the simulation is a celestial alignment. And we had that in January. So all the planets have lined up. So this is again, Bridget Knapp and her husband, Thomas Knapp. They essentially say that all simulations have they have a built-in thing at the end to stop them being hacked. And what happens at the end of the simulation is literally all the light codes start coming in. Everything starts coming in. The portals open, we connect to the higher dimensions, and high energy starts to stream in to essentially clear anything that isn't good, you know, that anything that needs to be cleared out, wiped out, whatever it may be. And I think the most fundamental part of this is to remember that nothing is physical, including us. we are also beings of light. And this is proven in, the rainbow body that we see with the monks, the Tibetan monks, and also in the Amazon. They talk of the jaguar body. And essentially, when they want to die, they meditate and they allow their body to just, become light. And that's what they do. And for me, that's physical proof. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So it's a simulation then, right? A multiverse simulation.
Yeah, but it's a biological, divine simulation.
A divine, yeah, no, I agree. I have some things to say.
And the artificial simulation that was created is trying to override and hack into that. But,
Oh, yeah, we know that. Charlie.
You cut me mid-type. I was just pointing out where folks can find the raise hand icon under the heart-shaped React tab. So please ask any questions. So I didn't know where this was going today, but very pleased that Elisabeth, you're delving into the old world issue because we want more presenters on that topic because it's a new one for most truth seekers, and the implications and possibilities just blow your mind. So I just wanted to first point out to folks that we do have one of those people presenting January 8th. So if that's interesting to you, please make sure and come back January 8th. We'll have a presenter on Satan's Little Season, which is one of the phrases involved in this very wide topic as a deep one. And let's see here. You showed some cathedrals. I have a family member who was an architect for the DC Cathedral for decades. And I don't know to what extent he was designing or architecting. The cathedrals are a big point of evidence for that old world theory. So you mentioned a couple things. My question, you said Earth is a container, number one, and then you said space isn't what we think. And you mentioned the deep state takeover of the secret space program. So can you talk a bit more about this idea that Earth is a container or space isn't what we think? Because we've had lots of presenters on those topics.
So I think we can see Earth as a motherboard, like a computer board. And as we can see with computer boards like we have here, it's like a holographic, nothing is physical. So for me, nature it's cymatics, it's physical manifestation of frequencies. And we could see that coming out of the Earth. So the Earth as a container for frequencies that are coming out. We can see that in the star forts, in the crop circles. So we can see the frequencies actually in the Earth. But it also links with the sky. And what the ancients believed or knew was that everywhere we had a frequency on the Earth, we had a corresponding frequency in the sky. And we can see with the Orion that many things were linked with Orion, that many things, the pyramids, we've got the Bosnian pyramids linked with the Pleiades. And actually, Jim, this is the book that you gave to me. This is Biogeometry, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, which is a very interesting book. You might want to read that. And he talks about the BG3, a spiritual energy, essentially, spiritual energy, which it linked the Earth with the sky. And am I explaining it properly? I'm not too sure I am, really, but I find it very hard to explain.
Yeah, I think some of these subjects for our human brains are never going to be clearly explained. That's what I personally think. And it's he threw a tough question at you. because I don't know the answer there either. But we got a few hands up, so let me move on, if that's okay. Rosemary.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I've always been interested in astrology. My mother, having a Celtic background, was quite interested in that, palm reading and other things. And so the supernatural was never super to me. It was normal. And I have a lot of relatives going back in my ancestry from Salem. So there's some sacred geometry that I've been studying and quantum physics, and I thought that you did a beautiful job putting everything together.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, nice comment. Thank you. Linda, actually, before you come up, I wanted to say, and to Charlie
Yes.
too, dinosaurs seem to be another area that it's coming up that there never were any dinosaurs. That
Yeah.
this is a whole scam also, which is pretty amazing that they pulled this off as well, if that's the case. But it's looking like it is. We should get someone talking about that, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. To suddenly like invent dinosaurs in the 1850s,
Right.
what they were discovering was dragons. But also some of the dinosaurs, they are dragons, but they still look like dinosaurs, So they just, like I said, they rebrand everything. They rebrand constantly, to change history, to change everything.
Yeah. Linda, you're up.
Yes, my sincere congratulations for your slides, for your talk. I believe 100% what you said. Finally, our body, the physical body, does not exist. And do you know that with a specific frequency of sound, we can make disappear everything? Nature, material, so everything is energy and frequencies.
Yes,
This is called, I think, the sonic weapon. I hope no one is using that. Amazing.
I agree with you. Everything is frequency, everything. And
Everything.
yeah, and I think that, for me, the secret space programs, I know you asked a question before about that, Charles, and it just shows the level that they have researched this essentially, in secret bases under the earth for the past 80 years. They possibly have got assistance from off-world races, but the depth and level that they have got to with this understanding now, of everything frequency, it's
Energy,
mind-blowing.
yeah. Could you please put in the chat your website and your books for me to buy?
Yeah, of course.
And we'll
Thank
have that. I'll have that also in the video, Linda. That'll go out next week. So, or you can.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can
Thank you.
always get it
Thank
from
you.
me.
Thank you.
Let me just jump in a second. A couple of quick points. Philadelphia experiment. I interviewed some people. I knew the producer, my other life as a producer, who interviewed some of the guys from that ship. I think Duncan or what's his name? Oh, it'll come back to me. But the main guy, Al Beekman, Beekman. Anyway, who apparently jumped off and was in that movie. Jumped off the ship. They landed on the Earth ahead of time. In the future, ended up going back. They made their way back to the naval base or something, and came back. And at the time, now the movie says, it's a pretty good movie if you ever watch it, anybody, that they landed when they jumped off the ship and they didn't get stuck in the metal and died, like many did. They landed in 1988. But Al Bielek, Al said to my friend, he said, it wasn't 88. We originally landed in 2000 and I think it was 3. I can't remember. It was just before the Bush-Gore, was it Bush-Gore election, where it was the hanging chads in America, and it was the presidential election was decided by the courts, basically. And my friend said, okay, well, if you really went you landed in time, then what's going to happen with the coming election? It was before the election. And he told him the story, and the guy thought, that's crazy, no way. And then 3 months later, that's exactly what happened. So I'm just sharing.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
yeah. And the other thing was, because you talk about dimensions, and I don't know, I think it's terminology. We don't even know. Multidimensional, what's a dimension, what's a density, what's a parallel Earth, What is my parallel? Do I have parallel lives? I think I do. I mean, I think half the time when I'm sleeping and I have dreams, they're not like messages or any, it's like I'm in another body or myself kind of, but somewhere else having a regular life. It's just like, okay, sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's boring. I mean, they're all different, but I am definitely getting that sense. Yeah. Okay, Sharon, you're up.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It was a wonderful presentation. I'm very interested in a lot of those topics, but I was going to ask you if you've ever heard of the teachings of Eckankar. It's
No.
it's a modern day. They've come back onto the surface, but they're a modern day mystery school, and they have a Golden Wisdom Temple up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, Chanhassen area. But they have teachings, 17 years of discourses that cover many of these topics, but basically just the topics from the highest spiritual viewpoint of soul. And it used to be known as the religion of the light and sound of God. But many of these topics are covered throughout the years, either in the discourses or some of the books by the founder, Paul Twitchell. But you might find those interesting. And then also, I'm wondering, I want to know more about, because they do talk in the teachings of Eckankar, they do talk about the different dimensions and the planes of existence, and that each plane is actually a representation or a mock-up of the plane above it. So I'm wanting to know more about what is really meant by a simulation, because we also understand that this world is an illusion, but just because it's an illusion, it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I agree with you.
so
What is real? What is real?
right. So that's why I never really get what they mean by a simulation
Well,
of.
the thing is that so many of these terms have been messed around with and manipulated by Hollywood movies, the deep state. So we are left with, like a huge mess of understanding of what these things are. And so simulation, I do not think it's like, The Matrix. And I'm not saying that The Matrix are not good films, but I think that possibly it's making us look at something which I think is divine, beautiful, amazing, incredible. It's a living field to me. And to call that a simulation feels rather, dumbing it down, really. So I call it biological, biological intelligence, Garden of Eden. It's a Garden of Eden simulation, and it was
Yes.
hacked. It was hacked by something. And and now we're coming out of that. And so, yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I really, really do. I've never heard of those teachings. If you want to write that name in the chat and I can see how you spell it, then I can look up what
Well,
they are.
yes. Yeah, I'll put that in there. Yeah, and the goal there with Eckankar is to take you beyond the lower worlds into the high spiritual worlds where you exist as pure soul. And
Yes. And I
so,
would say that that's what the deeper levels of existence are, and that's what the higher
right.
realms are that the Indian Vedas have been talking about for millions of years.
Yes, because these teachings have been around since the beginning of life on Earth, and even came from other dimensions to Earth.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yes, Elisabeth, hi. I just want to say a
Hi.
huge thank you for all the research you've done in your book. It's been giving me
Thank you.
many answers. I've resonated with a lot of things. And
Thank you.
like Jim said, I think we need to concentrate on peace because we are powerful co-creators. of love and light. And this is the only way to keep our frequency and vibration high.
Yeah, and if we can do it together or get groups together for a little
Yes, I
meditations
think
or something.
that's right, because it becomes exponential.
Yeah. That's the pavilion idea. That's really why I'm doing that. I don't put it in the commercial prospectus because I don't want to get too many people like,
Yeah, we need people on the same wavelength and then work with
yeah,
that pure idea. But Elisabeth, thank you for this amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Charlie, wrapping it up.
Thank you, Jim. When Dr. Ward mentioned Echo and Car, that reminded me of the Echo and Car chant that we teach in Kundalini Yoga, which is heavily reliant on mantra. I'm a certified teacher. Echo and Car, movements inside. And I wondered, number one, if you have any thoughts on the use of mantra to help create this universe in this biological simulation, number one. And number two, you raised another phrase that kind of connects to other guests. The building of these old world buildings by the devas in the Sanskrit. And one of our presenters a long time ago said some of them were fallen angels and not so good, and that they morphed after the Great Flood or the mud floods into perhaps some of the demonic aliens or some people on Earth now who are kind of involved with that deep state kind of negative lower chakra feeling that we don't like so much. So number one, your thoughts on you mentioned hum. That's also a mantra that we use. Hum. Feel the vibration here. Where in the beginning there was the word, so that's creation. Your thoughts on that? Do you ever think much about that? Do you have a practice that involves that? Number two, these devas or divas who built the old world buildings. Any more thoughts on them and what they created and whether they're still here? Anything you want to say about that?
I have a huge amount of thoughts on all of that. So first of all, my first book, I talk about the brain waves, prayer. So it's been proven that prayer is essentially a way to access lower or brainwave activity, essentially. So gamma brain waves in terms of the nuns and the monks. But in terms of us lowering our brain waves, because like I said, with the brain, 11-dimensional structures of the brain, we've got the pineal gland. I actually teach psychic development to groups online. We do a lot around sound, frequency, the heart, all of these different things, the chakras. I think that, we are a fundamental part of this living field, and we really have no idea how powerful our bodies and our minds are. But we've been stuck in the mind for a very, very, very long time. And we're moving into a new human. The geneticists know that we're moving into a new human, and they don't understand why. And that's probably why they're gathering our DNA at every given opportunity. And we are moving into this new human. And I think the new human is going to be, we are going to connect back with our heart, and the heart is the higher mind as well, the superconscious mind, as Joe Dispenza calls it. So it all works together, the living field with our mind, our heart, our bodies, our chakras, everything. You probably know this already, but the chakras are said to link us to other dimensions. But as Michio Kaku says, dimensions are not places to go. They are states of being, they are frequencies, because there is no place to go. We are all part of this living field. Remote viewing has proven this. We don't go anywhere. We are already everywhere. And, that's a fundamental part, I think, of, the multiverse, the universe, the living field, all of this sort of thing, is that we need to remember who we are. We need to understand who we are and the part that we play in this living field, I think. And in terms of what you're talking about with the divas and all those buildings, I think maybe I need to come back and do another presentation on that one, because that is huge and there's a lot of information, and it does actually broach into Satan's little season, which of course is up next year. That's why we're all waiting with bated breath. What's going to happen in 2026? July 4th, 2026 is supposed to be the end of Satan's little season.
Well, maybe Jim will invite you to join our January 8th show with someone I think also from Britain. I forget who he is. I can look at the calendar. But January 8th, when Thursday probably, noon
Is it
Eastern.
Guy? Is it Guy?
Yeah, let me just I'll share the screen real quick, and I think it's his name is here. Let me just move over to the page. It's Guy Anderson. Yeah, you know
Yeah,
him?
Guy Anderson. Yeah, so he's a friend. We've been friends for about 2 years. He was also one of the Tartarian speakers, and he's a very, very good researcher. You're in for a really good time with him. He'll really dive deep into that.
Well, join if you want, and then
Yeah, I'd
tell
love
Jim
to.
who
Thank
else.
you.
Tell Jim who else we should have on, because we want more old world stuff.
Oh yeah, so gosh, there's all the
Or you
speakers.
come back. We have repeat presenters.
Well, Michelle Gibson, she's from America. She's amazing. Talks about the ley lines, the star forts. You should definitely have her on. And then Bridget Knapp, who I talk about in my presentation here. Her and her husband, oh my gosh, phenomenal researchers,
Okay,
Bring 'em
we'll
on.
follow up. We'll set it up. Thank you. That'd be great. Okay, let me stop Charlie's share there for a minute. And thank you. Why don't you tell people again where to find you, your website or social media, whatever you'd like, so they can connect.
Yeah, so my website is elisabethhancock.com, and I spell Elizabeth with an S, not a Z, because it's the Welsh spelling. My grandmother was Welsh. And my YouTube channel is at Elisabeth Hancock, and again, Elizabeth with an S.